Good evening and welcome to tonight's presentation, Orientation for New Fiscally Sponsored Projects. My name is Teresa Hubbard and I am an Associate Director for Program Operations here at Fractured Atlas. Thank you for taking the time tonight to attend this webinar. We appreciate having proactive members who go out of their way to learn about our programming policies and procedures before they dive headfirst into their fundraising. Tonight, we are using Caption Access to provide attendees with closed captioned and video remote American Sign Language interpretation, or VRI. This is a part of our effort to better serve the deaf and hard of hearing artists and the disability community at large. Tonight, our ASL interpreter is Melissa Hines, an RID certified interpreter. If you have any questions about Fractured Atlas's accessibility work, please feel free to contact us after the webinar. Tonight's webinar is being recorded, so don't feel pressured to jot down copious amounts of notes. We will send you a link to the recording later this week, which you are welcome to share with anyone that you think might be interested. In the last 12 months, our fiscally sponsored projects have raised more than $24 million. Fractured Atlas's fiscal sponsorship program extends some of the benefits of our 501c3 status to artists and arts organizations so that they can solicit tax-deductible donations from individuals and institutional funding, which would otherwise only be available to nonprofits. Currently, we have more than 4,000 artists and arts organizations who are fiscally sponsored by Fractured Atlas. They're producing either one-off discrete projects like a single film or a dance production, or we're sponsoring them for their ongoing artistic activities like a startup theater company or the work in progress of a visual artist. Fractured Atlas has the largest fiscal sponsorship program in the nonprofit arts sector. And how many Fractured Atlas staff members administer this program? 11. That's right. We're able to run the largest arts fiscal sponsorship program in the country with a lean staff of 11 individuals who also support our members using our other programs. When you give us a call or shoot us an email, you will be working with any one of us at any given time, depending on the nature of your inquiry. Now, a little bit about myself. As I mentioned before, my name is Teresa, and I'm an Associate Director for Program Operations at Fractured Atlas. I've worked at Fractured Atlas for almost 7.5 years now and have been advising artists and arts organizations on how to use fiscal sponsorship to fundraise for their creative practices for most of that time. My background is in classical singing, and I enjoy singing in choirs and attending live musical events in my free time. The way we're able to run a program of this size so smoothly and efficiently is that we have built custom software that allow for much of the program to be automated, and there's a great deal of functionality at your fingertips that allows you to control a large portion of your fundraising activities. And the purpose of today's presentation is to show you a path forward with our fiscal sponsorship program by giving you a tour of what's available to you on our website and to outline some of our program policies and procedures. Once our board of directors approves your project for the program, you will be able to log into our website and access your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. This is your primary portal for interacting with the program. We're going to talk through some of the features of this page as well as our program policies. There is no substitute for hands-on learning, though, and we can't possibly cover everything in this presentation. So I encourage you to thoroughly explore this page on our website and read through our program policies and procedures, which are available in our knowledge base as your first steps once you're set up with sponsorship. One of the first things to understand about our fiscal sponsorship program is that it makes the distinction between earned and contributed revenue. Earned revenue refers to any funds given in exchange for a good or service. This is usually known as a purchase or fee for service and is not considered tax deductible according to the IRS. Contributed revenue, on the other hand, is any amount of money given without the expectation of receiving anything in exchange. This is usually a donation or a grant in which a donor gives an amount of money to support your work but doesn't get anything in return. contributed revenue is generally considered tax deductible. Earned revenue needs to be made payable to you directly. We do not process earned revenue for the purposes of our fiscally sponsored projects. Fractured Atlas can only accept contributed revenue for the purposes of our projects. We now accept projects that do have for-profit investors, though we cannot process private investments or equity. There is an addendum we ask our projects to sign if they are expecting for-profit investors. We only process charitable donations from individuals or institutions for the purposes of our fiscally sponsored projects. We can help you process donations or contributed revenue 3 different ways. First is by credit or debit card on our website or on a crowdfunding campaign. We can also accept donations made by check to payable to Fractured Atlas. And we can accept non-cash donations of goods made in kind to the charitable purposes of your project. And we'll talk a little bit more about these, about non-cash donations later. Each of our fiscally sponsored projects has a donation landing page on our website where they can direct donors who want to contribute by debit or credit card. We can accept credit card donations up to $20,000 per transaction. So if you have the enviable problem of knowing a donor who wants to contribute more than $20,000 and charge it to their credit card, you'll just need to ask them to do so over multiple charges and have them wait about 5 or more minutes to be safe between transactions so that our system doesn't think that it's a duplicate donation made by mistake. Donors who contribute by credit card are required to provide an email address so we can automatically send them a tax receipt. Please note that you are prohibited from collecting credit card information from your donors and entering it into our website on your own. Donors must input their own debit or credit card information or contact Fractured Atlas to process a donation over the phone. This opens us up to some liability issues since you, as a sponsored project, are not authorized to use our credit card processor in this way. Your donation landing page is a public-facing page on our website where you should put content that you want potential donors to use. This can be an image or a YouTube or Vimeo video along with a brief description of your project or what your current activities are. You can edit your sponsored project's online profile on our website through your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Online Profile button. When you submit changes, an automated email will go to a member of our staff asking for review and approval before it goes live on our website. We typically turn this around within 1 to 2 business days, and we'll either approve the changes outright or we'll be in touch with you directly via email if we have any questions about the new material that you're putting up on our profile. We can also accept check donations that are made payable to Fractured Atlas. You're welcome to have donors write your name or the name of your sponsored project in the memo line, but this isn't entirely necessary because we ask that your donors mail you their contribution first. Once you receive donation checks from your donors, you will then report donations made by check on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Donations heading. Here is where you'll create the donor record for check contributions. You'll provide the donor's name, contact information, and other info available to you from their check before forwarding it on to us for processing and deposit. You'd be surprised how many unreported checks arrive at our office, which we end up spending a lot of time doing detective work to figure out which of our fiscally sponsored projects they're recommended for. We often have to mail unreported checks back to the donor or back to you, as it's crucial that we receive this information in advance. So to recap the process, your donors will send you their check contributions first. You will submit donation reports on our website, and then you will forward the checks on to us for processing and deposit. You will be sent an email confirmation once the donation is processed with a copy of the receipt to forward on to your donor with your thanks. We can accept check donations of any size. but those of $2,500 or more require an extra piece of documentation called the Major Gift Letter. The Major Gift Letter is a simple form letter that's available to download from your MyFiscal sponsorship page for your donor to complete and sign. You're able to upload the Major Gift Letter as an attachment to the donation report, but it's not required and can be emailed or mailed to us at any time. Feel free to send us the check to process before you even receive the Major Gift Letter if you aren't able to obtain both at the same time. We're happy to process reported checks of $2,500 or more without a Major Gift Letter, but the donated funds will not be made available to you until we are in receipt of a signed and completed letter. As a nonprofit, we are required to submit ourselves to an annual internal audit during which our auditors look for this extra verification of the donor's intent to donate to Fractured Atlas in support of your project. There are a couple of different types of monetary donations that we cannot accept, specifically cash and money orders. In order for us to issue a tax receipt, we need to be able to directly link money back to a specific individual or entity. A credit card transaction or a check with the donor's bank account and routing numbers on it provides that direct link. Because cash and money orders are not specific to an individual's financial institution or bank account, they do not provide that paper trail back to the donor. You're welcome to accept cash or money orders directly for donors who do not need for their contribution to be tax deductible. If, however, they want a tax receipt, instruct them to contribute via debit or credit card on our website or by check made payable to Fractured Atlas. We can, however, help you accept non-cash or in-kind donations. These donations must be physical, tangible items that you can touch with your hands, the ownership of which is fully donated over to your project. So let's unpack this a little bit further. We can only process donations of physical, tangible items, so they need to exist in the real world and you can touch them with your hand. Donations of a person's time or services are not considered by the IRS to be charitable or a tax deductible donation. So if a restaurant donates food or beverage to you, they can get a receipt for those items. But if they donate their catering services, they could not get a tax receipt that includes their contributed time. We can, however, accept gift cards or gift certificates from businesses that otherwise sell these items. In order to be tax deductible, non-cash donations need to be fully donated over for the purposes of your sponsored projects. So, donations of rent or rental items wouldn't count. If someone gives you equipment for free that they would normally charge a rental fee for, and you need to return the items when you're done, that's really more of a loan, even if they're waiving the rental fee. Similarly, donated space rentals wouldn't count as tax deductible, as you're not being given what the IRS calls full interest in the property. In other words, if you need to give it back, it's not considered a donation. Finally, we cannot accept donations of donated airfare, air miles, or automobiles. As with check donations, you'll need to report non-cash donations on your MyFiscal sponsorship page under the donations heading. This is where you will also find your non-cash donation letter. The non-cash donation letter is another simple form for the donor to fill out where they can provide a description and the value of the items that they are contributing. You can upload the non-cash donation letter to the donation report when you submit it through your MyFiscal sponsorship page. For non-cash donations valued at $250 or more, we will require a photograph of the donated item or items. So to be sure to take that photograph as soon as you receive the donation, especially if it's donated food or beverage that'll be consumed pretty much immediately. With all donations that we process for the purposes of our fiscally sponsored project, we deduct an administrative fee to cover the costs of running this program. Our administrative fee pays for our website maintenance, staff time, and things like credit card processing and bank fees. The fee starts at 7%, but as you raise more money, the fee is lowered on check donations. The breakdown looks like this. If you raise $150,000 or more over the lifetime of your fiscal sponsorship, the administrative fee on check donations goes down to 6%. At $500,000 or more, it is reduced to 5%. And if you raise $1 million or more, the fee goes down to 4%. And we have had projects raise that at least that much money over the time with us. The fee remains at 7% though for credit card donations, as the processing fee that we incur from credit card merchants does not change. We also charge a fee on the stated value of donated non-cash items. You can either have us charge this fee to your credit card on file or have us deduct it from your project's available fund balance. And you can always check your fund balance on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Info/Reports heading. But maybe we're going too fast and should take a step back. Because before we can even start processing donations, how do we get people to actually consider making a contribution? Well, we ask them. This is often the first hurdle that budding arts entrepreneurs encounter. Every day we talk to artists or art startups who experience an initial queasiness about actually asking people for money. If this sounds like you, consider yourself in good company. All nonprofit artistic ventures in the United States require philanthropic support to keep in operation. That goes for the Metropolitan Opera in New York or the Getty Museum in LA. Don't consider it panhandling or begging. Consider it an offer. You are offering potential patrons an opportunity to get involved with something bigger than themselves, and with fiscal sponsorship, offering them tax deductibility as well. As soon as you're approved for fiscal sponsorship, we recommend that you send out an appeal asking for people to make a contribution and to let them know that their donation will now be tax deductible. Here are some different ideas for how to ask. An email blast, a snail mail letter campaign, a newsletter. You can put it on your website. You can host a fundraising event, run a crowdfunding campaign, and more. You should consider all of them at least at some point as part of your larger fundraising strategy. We have an individual appeal letter template, among other fundraising templates, available for you to take a look at on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. Crafting a good letter is more than just plugging your info into a formula and pressing send. So I would strongly encourage you to use this template as a way to kickstart your brainstorming about the letter that you intend to send out. But before you send out your appeal to potential donors, please send us a copy first for our review and approval. You can email your fundraising materials to support@fracturedatlas.org. A good rule of thumb is that anytime you mention Fractured Atlas or promise donors tax deductibility, you should run it by us before sending it out. We require that you do this for a few different reasons. First off, it's in your best interest to have another experienced pair of eyes take a look at what you're about to send out. At this point, I've reviewed probably hundreds of donor solicitations and have a pretty good idea of what a successful, well-presented appeal letter looks like. We can offer you some tips and tools to potentially maximize the effectiveness of your fundraising materials. So we'll definitely provide feedback where appropriate, but we're also looking to see that you're correctly representing the fiscal sponsorship relationship. To that end, we've crafted some standard text that we require you to include with your donor solicitation materials. This can be found in our knowledge base. It's just a quick 2-sentence paragraph that succinctly summarizes the fiscal sponsorship arrangement. You're welcome to include it as fine print at the bottom of your materials, but it must be in there somewhere. We're also looking to see that you're offering donors, to see what you're offering donors in exchange for the contribution. For example, advertising space. Unfortunately, you're not permitted to sell ad space through your fiscal sponsorship or give it away as an incentive in exchange for a donation. You are, however, allowed to offer corporate sponsorship in exchange. What's the difference? Well, it has to do with who maintains control over the content and placement of that content. If your contributor has control over what will be listed in your materials or if you are in some way endorsing their products or services, this is considered advertising. If you, however, maintain control over the content and you're not endorsing their products or services, this is considered corporate sponsorship. Typically, corporate sponsorship comes in the way of a logo or name placement on your website or other materials. Frequently, this will be posted as a thank you or in recognition of the sponsor. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out to our staff and we'll be happy to assist. Other things we might be looking for are you running a raffle? This might be a good idea, but you're prohibited from running it through your fiscal sponsorship with us. This means you cannot award donors raffle tickets in exchange for a tax-deductible donation. Raffles are considered a form of gambling in the state of New York, which is regulated, and raffles generally are regulated at the state level. And so it's not something that Fractured Atlas really wants to get involved with. Whenever you offer donors rewards of goods or services in exchange for their contribution, this makes their donation partially deductible above and beyond the fair market value of the rewards they are receiving. For example, if you offer a $10 t-shirt in exchange for a $100 donation, $90 of that donation are considered tax deductible. To use another example, if you offer a $20 ticket in exchange for a $150 donation, the amount donated above $20 is considered tax deductible. We need donations to be at least partially tax deductible. You wouldn't be able to offer donor rewards of equal or greater value to the amount that they are contributing. Such an exchange no longer becomes contributed revenue and is a purchase or earned revenue. One place where partial deductibility often comes into play is with a crowdfunding campaign. Frequently, fundraisers will offer rewards in exchange for donations through their campaigns. We have a platform available for our fiscally sponsored projects, which allows for you to run a crowdfunding campaign and still offer your donors a tax receipt. This includes the ability for you to set up rewards with a fair market value attached so we can issue accurate receipts to your donors. In the year 2018, it's likely that you've heard of crowdfunding and supported campaigns yourself, so I'm sure you know what it is. We encourage our projects to run a campaign at least once as part of their overall fundraising strategy, and we have other materials available to you if you have questions about how to run an effective campaign. Alternatively, if you don't want to run a crowdfunding campaign, or if you want to offer giving levels to donors on an ongoing basis, you can add some to your donation landing page on our website. From the My Fiscal Sponsorship page, click the Donations button and then click Giving Levels. Your donors will then be presented with options on our website for different giving levels that they can contribute at, and if you want to offer donors rewards, their online debit or credit card donation can be partially tax deductible. Fiscal sponsorship can open the door to institutional funding as well, like from foundations or corporations. As with approvals of your individual solicitations and crowdfunding campaigns, we want to be involved when you apply for grants from these sources. Before you start even looking at grants, however, you should be aware of our grant eligibility requirement. We require that projects raise at least $1,000 before they are eligible to apply for grants through us. If you can show that you've raised $1,000 through contributed income, we may be able to waive that requirement for you. Sorry, just clicking through here. Okay, so now that you've successfully solicited donations and had patrons donate to your fiscally sponsored projects, what's next? How do you access these donated funds? Well, first you need to send us the info for your checking account, which you can do by downloading the sign-up form for Electronic Funds Transfer, or EFT, from your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Fund Releases heading. We strongly recommend that you have an account for your project's finances that is separate from your personal finances. This doesn't need to be a business bank account, but it can be a separate personal checking account. Here's what our sign-up form looks like. It's pretty simple to complete. You can send us the completed form with a voided check in one of three ways. You can scan it and email it to support@fracturedatlas.org. You can fax it to 212-277-8025, or you can send it to us in the mail. All of our contact information is available on our website. So the reason we'll also need for you to submit a voided check, like I mentioned. And the reason we need for this is so that we have a record from the bank of your account and routing numbers. The bank document that you send doesn't necessarily need to be a voided check if you don't have those for your bank account. They can instead be bank statements that include the same information. Maybe it's a letter from your bank on bank letterhead that confirms this information as well. As long as we can see the account and routing numbers as well as the account holder name and address, you should be good to go as long as that information comes from the bank. So once we've received your checking account information, you'll be able to submit a fund release request through our website. We hold all donations for 7 days after we process them to make sure that the check doesn't bounce or that the credit card charge isn't disputed. After 7 days, donated funds are available for you to request unless we're waiting on a major gift letter for a check donation of $2,500 or more. We're happy to hold on to donated funds as long as you need us to, provided that you remain a dues-paying member of Fractured Atlas with an active fiscally sponsored project, and then we can release them to you when you have project-related expenses. We do not automatically transfer funds to our projects. As a fiscal sponsor, we need to demonstrate that we maintain a certain degree of discretion and control over how funds raised through our program are used. The fund release request process is a control in place to make sure that fiscally sponsored projects are using funds in alignment with our charitable mission. When you submit a fund release request, you'll let us know how much you need and how you'll be spending the money using some pretty broad expense category budget line items. So you can say that $1,000 is for public relations and $500 is for space rental. There is an other expense category, but here's a helpful hint. We almost never let anyone use other as an explanation for their expenses. Almost 100% of the time, your expenses will fit into one of the other categories provided. So if you have any questions about which line item to use for your specific expense, feel free to ask our staff. One thing that you're not allowed to do is re-grant funds raised through our program to another individual or entity with no strings attached. The best use of fiscal sponsorship is to raise money to spend on expenditures related to the art that you're creating or the service you're providing. And this can include paying people a salary, for example, or a stipend for their time, but you're not able to award grants or prizes through fiscal sponsorship funds to other entities. For particularly large fund release requests, we will ask for backup documentation to substantiate the expenses. This serves as an additional way we can provide oversight for the funds raised through our program. Documentation can be in the form of receipts, signed agreements and invoices, and quotes. If, for example, you're going to reimburse yourself for a collaborator for an expense paid out of pocket, we'd want to see a receipt showing what was purchased and how much it cost. If you're planning to pay an artist for time spent working on your project, we'd want to see a signed invoice or agreement outlining what services are provided and how much the artist will be paid. Specifically, documentation will be required for all requests of $5,000 or more, but we do reserve the right to ask for documentation for any requested amount and may ask for documentation at least once for larger requests that are still less than $5,000. We're happy to be flexible though, because we know this can be daunting. If you're purchasing something online and cannot provide a quote, for example, you can send us a screenshot of the item you plan to purchase. If you don't have a signed agreement with a collaborator, forward us an email conversation in which you agree to the services that will be rendered and amount to be paid to that artist. Ultimately, we're looking for some sort of agreement between you and your vendor or collaborator that outlines what goods or services will be exchanged and how much will be paid for them. Ultimately, you'll need all of this documentation when you file your taxes, so the fund release process can help you keep them in order. Speaking of taxes, when you applied for fiscal sponsorship, you may recall that you were asked to provide a legal entity with a U.S. taxpayer ID. This is either an individual with their Social Security number or a business entity with its Employer Identification Number, or EIN. We can work with any type of legal entity, whether or not you're an individual sole proprietor or a corporation, an LLC, and it's important to note that the legal entity we have on file doesn't necessarily need to match the type of business you're doing. If, for example, you are a small theater collective, but you have a legal entity that is an individual, that's fine, even if you're fiscally sponsored for your ongoing activities. Similarly, an individual who is fiscally sponsored for their ongoing artistic activities might have an LLC set up for those business activities. So it's important to keep in mind that what you're fiscally sponsored for depends more on your activities and less on your legal entity. We ask for the legal entity because funds dispersed through our fiscal sponsorship program are reported as taxable income to that legal entity in the form of a grant. So each January, we issue a 1099 miscellaneous to individuals, sole proprietors, partnerships, and LLCs showing funds dispersed the previous calendar year to file with their other tax documents. The funds will be listed as Box 3 or Other Income, which is where grant income tends to fall. Corporations are not issued 1099s, but they will still need to report Fractured Atlas income on their tax documents. That said, you should not necessarily have to pay income tax on Fractured Atlas fund releases unless you're paying yourself, because we only release funds to you when you request it for use on your specific project-related expenses. So you should be able to offset the income on your taxes using the expenses that the funds paid for. And this is where those receipts and other documentation come into play. That you'll need to account for those expenses and have that documentation for offsetting the income. We strongly recommend that you work with an accountant to file and keep careful documentation of your expenditures. None of us are tax experts, so while we can tell you that these funds are taxable income, we will not be able to advise you on how to include them on your taxes. An important thing to keep in mind is that your project is a separate business entity from Fractured Atlas. One of the great aspects of this is that you maintain complete ownership over the work that you create. But we do not grant you 501c3 status. Only the IRS can do that. Rather, we're extending some of the benefits of our nonprofit status to the projects that we sponsor. To that end, we'll want you to check in with us on a few things, primarily the use of our tax ID. I'm sure if a friend of yours asked for your Social Security number, you would be curious about why. In the same way, anytime you encounter a situation that requires Fractured Atlas's EIN, please let us know so that we can advise on its usage. We're happy to provide sponsorship confirmation letters addressed to specific potential donors or sponsors to help grease the wheels, but we cannot provide a one-size-fits-all confirmation document with our EIN, as we want to be be involved in each and every situation where a project is requesting our info or where a donor is requesting our info, just email us at support@fracturedatlas.org. Outline what's going on, who's asking for the information, why they're asking for it, and we should be able to issue a letter for you, if appropriate. We are not able to help you set up a bank account using our EIN. Any account that you create needs to be set up in your own name and with your own tax ID. So don't sign up for anything that requires our name or tax ID without running it by us first. We can also provide a letter to help you obtain nonprofit rates from vendors that offer them. It's ultimately up to the vendor if they want to extend you the rate, but most are willing to do so. This is especially helpful with space rentals. If the venue offers a nonprofit rate, we can usually help you get that discount. Again, just send us an email and we'll send you a letter. Nonprofit rates do not apply to bulk postage for your mailings. This is something that you would only have access to if you had your own 501c3 status. We're also not able to help you with sales tax exemption because our lawyers have advised us not to extend that benefit since we cannot provide oversight for the purchase or rental. The final major fiscal sponsorship policy to bring to your attention is our annual report. For any fiscally sponsored project that either processed donations or requested fund releases in a given calendar year, we are going to require that you submit to us an annual report updating us on your activities. The report is always due on April 1st, which is 90 days after the close of the calendar year, and we will send out 3 reminders starting at the beginning of the year. If you don't complete the report by April 1st, we will freeze your project. But it's a relatively simple process to unfreeze your fiscal sponsorship. All you need to do is submit the report. You can access your annual report on the My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Info/Reports button. The report is entirely online, so you don't need to prepare a different document, and it has 2 major components. The first is that we ask you to provide a brief narrative description of what you accomplished the previous calendar year. This can be as detailed as you'd like, although we would prefer that you keep it relatively brief so that it doesn't take us too long to review. With the narrative, you provide a numerical impact for your work to show how many people were exposed to your work and how many artists participated. We also ask for updated financials. Because we only process contributed revenue for your fiscally sponsored project, we are only aware of income and expenditures related to the funds that we've handled. So this is an opportunity for you to tell us about other funds handled separately from the program, where they came from and how they were spent. Also, if you changed how funds released through our program were spent, like if you said that $1,000 was going to be used for transportation, but you ended up spending it on utilities, this is your chance to let us know so that we can better adjust our own books and our own records. The annual report is another important way that we demonstrate the discretion and control over how funds raised through our program are used. But this is also a way for us to collect data about the artists and arts organizations that we serve so that we can better understand our own impact in the nonprofit arts sector in the United States. The more accurately you can provide your data, the more complete is our picture for the kind of business or sponsored projects our sponsored projects are able to do in their own communities. I'm going to open it up for questions momentarily, but I hope you've gotten a sense for how easy our fiscal sponsorship program is to use and how much power you have at your fingertips through the online tools available on our website. I would encourage you once again to thoroughly explore your My Fiscal Sponsorship page and our program manual and policies for a more comprehensive overview of all of our program policies and procedures. And before we open it up for questions, I'd like to quickly introduce Fractured Atlas's other programs and services. Artfully is an online system to manage your tickets, donations, and contacts. It's a simple, elegant way to keep track of events, people, and your everyday work. You can sell tickets on your site or through an Artfully storefront and provide ticket buyers and donors with automatic email receipts, among other things, to manage tickets and patrons. Artfully works with fiscally sponsored projects, so you can track your donors and your other fans in the same place. It's a great way to start understanding your audiences, managing your segments, and organizing your communications. Our next program is Space Finder, which is an online marketplace that matches renters with venues that meet their unique needs. For artists, the process of finding workspace can be frustrating and inefficient. Meanwhile, venues have limited resources to spend on finding new renters. Earned revenue is critical for creative venues, yet many rental spaces are tragically underutilized. Through the Space Finder program, Fractured Atlas is increasing visibility of rental options, helping artists find the space they need, and helping venues promote and rent their spaces. There are over 5,000 spaces listed and 554,000 searches for space every year. There are also $800,000 or more in annual rental referrals to participating creative venues. Space Finder is available or is coming soon to the locations listed here. Thanks to the combined purchasing power of the Fractured Atlas community, our members have access to high-quality insurance coverage for much lower rates than would otherwise be possible. More importantly, with one foot in the arts and another in the world of insurance, we've worked with some of the world's leading insurance companies to design a number of proprietary insurance programs that are specifically tailored to meet your specific needs. We've even made the process as quick and painless as possible, and all of the application materials are available online. So I'm going to open it up for questions now. Feel free to chat me your questions in the Q&A box, and I will answer them aloud. If there are no questions, or if any of you need to drop off a little bit early, I wanted to take a moment to thank you again for taking the time tonight to attend the presentation. By this point, if we've done our job right, you should have a more clear picture of a road forward for how to use our fiscal sponsorship program to its best extent. Thank you so much for attending, and have a great night. I will stay on for a few minutes to answer any questions that you have. So we have a question here. Do you know how the new tax bill passed earlier this year will affect arts tax deductibility? That's a really great question, and we don't have a complete answer for you. We do know that the standard deduction, it was proposed at least that the standard deduction increases, and there is some speculation that this could affect whether or not donors want to make contributions. But ultimately, ultimately, people were not necessarily donating just to get a tax write-off. In a lot of cases, they were donating to support the work or the person completing the work. So our hope is that that particular aspect of the new tax bill will not affect any donations that are processed through the fiscal sponsorship program. We are going to meet with a tax expert at some point, hopefully this summer, to get a better idea of whether or not this actually will affect our program and if it'll affect our fiscally sponsored projects. So another question came in. Can you please say again how you help with crowdfunding? Yes. So Fractured Atlas has a crowdfunding platform called Fundraising by Fractured Atlas. It works very much the same way as one of the other platforms like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, where you can make a pitch through a campaign and set up a number of rewards to incentivize your donors to contribute. This you can connect to our fundraising platform through your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Accessorize heading. And everything from there is pretty automatic. You know, it pretty much walks you through the program where you can set up the campaign after you log in. You can submit it for approval so that our team can review and approve the campaign. And then once it's approved, you can go ahead and set it to launch on a specific date and time. All of our campaigns are limited to 90 days or less, and more features will be released because it's an ever-growing feature or software that we're continuing to build. So if you have any specific questions about crowdfunding strategies or what makes a good crowdfunding campaign, I would encourage you to contact our staff. And it looks like there's a follow-up question here. Do you have a success rate of your crowdfunding? So our crowdfunding campaign platform is fairly new, which means that we're still collecting a lot of data on that. We don't necessarily have a success rate, but ultimately, success of a crowdfunding campaign is dependent on how you market it. It's not something necessarily that somebody will just discover on our website or even on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. You know, those are the discovered campaigns are sort of the anomaly. In general, it has to do with how you reach out to your network and how large your network is, whether or not your campaign is actually successful. But at the same time, our crowdfunding platform is what is called a flexible funding model, which means you are going to have access to all of the funds that are received, regardless of whether or not you reach your goal. So if you needed help figuring out how to maybe adjust your budget or something like that because you didn't necessarily reach your goal, that's something we'd be happy to help you with. Success isn't necessarily just reaching your goal, right? It's about communicating with your donors and also about creating a piece of work and using whatever funds are donated toward that work to actually make it happen. So another question here is, do you need to be accepted into the fiscal sponsorship program to purchase insurance through Fractured Atlas? The answer is no. You would need to be a member of Fractured Atlas in order to purchase an insurance policy, but you do not need to be fiscally sponsored in order to submit an application for a quote or bind that quote. So another question here is, at what point do you take off the 7%? And I think what you're asking is, when do we assess that fee? And what happens is, as we process your donation or any donations made for the purposes of your project, we will make 93% of that donation available to you, essentially. So it is assessed at the time we actually process the donation, and you will not have to pay us a separate fee. We'll take care of all of that accounting on our side. Another question here is, what is the difference between membership in Fractured Atlas and a fiscally sponsored organization? So Fractured Atlas is a membership-based organization, and membership allows you access to our various programs and services. Fiscal sponsorship is one of the programs and services that we offer through the membership at Fractured Atlas. Insurance is another program that's available to you as a member. Artfully is another program that's available, and then Space Finder as well. There are different levels of membership which allow different access to these programs. For instance, you would need to be at either the professional or the organizational level of membership in order to access fiscal sponsorship or to purchase an insurance policy. There's another level of membership called the community membership, which is free, and that allows you access to Artfully and Space Finder and allows for you to submit an application for a quote for our insurance program. I hope that kind of answers your question. Great. Are there any other questions? Oh, here's another one. I know you are a non-exclusive fiscal sponsor. Can you still be a member and have another fiscal sponsor? Yes, that is absolutely possible. You are welcome to be a member and use some of our programs and then be fiscally sponsored by another fiscal sponsor. Or you can even be fiscally sponsored by Fractured Atlas and have another fiscal sponsor as well. You may find that you want another fiscal sponsor for different benefits, such as maybe there are grants that are only available in a specific location and they don't want to give to a charity in New York, like where Fractured Atlas is. So if that's the case, you're welcome to work with a local fiscal sponsor. The thing that I would caution you about is whether or not that fiscal sponsor is exclusive. If they are, then you would need to choose which one you need to work with. And also, you want to make sure that you are not confusing your donors by having information about how to donate to each fiscal sponsor on your website. So your messaging about those different relationships would need to be pretty clear. Great. Do we have any more questions? Well, if there are no more questions, I want to thank you all again for joining tonight. If you find that you are woken up from a dream because you have an urgent question that you didn't get to ask tonight, feel free to contact our staff at support@fracturedatlas.org, or you can give us a call at 888-692-7878. Thank you all for joining and have a great night.